Hey Gaurav, thank you so much for joining us to the Thinking Out Loud podcast. So, for the audience, a little introduction about who Gaurav is and what Gaurav has done till now. So, Gaurav is a BITS Pilani graduate. He's done his undergrad in mechanical engineering along with a majors in MSc in economics. Gaurav has been a delegate to the very famous Harvard US India initiative. Gaurav has worked as a senior executive with Viacom 18 in their digital ventures. He was one of the early team members at AirMeet. He's been on the investment team at Tanglin Venture Partners. The most exciting thing about Gaurav's career till date has been his book called The Pilani Pioneers, wherein he has started a conversation with some of the most promising entrepreneurs from BITS Pilani, 25 if I'm correct. And he's drafted their experience in the conversation through his book. Currently, Gaurav is playing a role of director supply at Stoa School, which is one of the leading alternative MBA companies, if I may say so, or programs, if I may say so, based out of India. So I think for someone who's graduated in the year 2019 and in the next 3 to 4 years, Gaurav has seemed to achieve a lot. And we would want to, demystify this and his journey at BITS Pilani through our conversation. So thank you so much, Gaurav, for coming to the Thinking Out Loud podcast. It's an honor to, have you here and get to know more about your life and your learnings.
Yeah. Firstly, Samyak, Samarth, thanks so much for having me. To be fair, I'm not sure if I'm qualified or distinguished enough. Samyak was just mentioning about the previous guest list, and it's an honor to be here, honestly, given the kind of people you've had on the podcast. So, yeah, thanks for having me.
So I think Gaurav, we always seem to always give importance to someone who's a CEO or founder and stuff like that. But sometimes we lose out on people like you, right? Who have achieved so much in such a tender age, and writing a book, working with so many great companies, and achieving a lot. And obviously, you have had your own startup as well. So doing all these things at such a tender age is something which we thought that should be noticed and should be someone like this also should be there on our podcast and not just like founders, CEOs, or anyone else. So yeah, glad to have you here. And we obviously ask this question first, whoever our guest is. What's your journey been like growing up, right? Like, were you financially sorted? You always wanted to be into the tech side, like you only want to do an engineering, or it's just an aspiration which came up while you were studying in your school or growing up seeing someone else? So walk us through your journey while growing up in terms of finance, education. How was it that you were brought up?
Got it. It's a very interesting question. I'll tell you why this holds a lot of meaning to me. Because I've given it a lot of thought as to why I am the way I am and how I function and make decisions, right? So grew up in Nashik, which is about 200 kilometers from Bombay. It's a tier 2 city. And growing up, I mean, one thing that was always there was life was very easy. Didn't have a lot of tech, didn't watch a lot of movies. I mean, occasionally you'd obviously see it once or twice in a quarter, but that was about that, right? Majority of my childhood was spent playing outside. So until eighth grade, honestly, I don't have enough memories because it was so simple. It was just every day, ha, school ho gaya khatam. Now uh, I'll go play cricket, football, all of that, right? But eighth grade is when, a lot of things started changing. And I think from a family structure as well, right? I'll tell you how it shaped me. And it's a very interesting, you know, theory or a framework, I would like to say, which I've learned from Gurudev, right? Which is about 5 S's of life. Every family goes from survival to stability to success to significance and then spirituality. So I feel my family was in the stability to success wala spectrum. And when your family is in that zone, you would want to be in the success to significance wala spectrum, right? And that's what I feel everything that I've been doing has been driving me towards, right? So from a family perspective, I think we were doing really well with respect to Nasik standards. Obviously, Bombay is a different beast when you compare, like, paying propensity or whatever, right? But I feel I had all the kind of resources growing up. I went to the top school in Nasik. Again, it's relative, but I'd like to feel I went to the top school in Nasik. Had really good friends, was decently smart, so obviously was good at acads. But the way I'd like to think is this was same for everyone else as well, right? So what really changed? So I'll take it a little to my grandfather, who was in the survival phase. So my grandparents, they had like 8 children, and again, all of them studied in this quota called economically backward class. And so because they studied in that, for my grandfather, he knew education was the only way out of, the financial condition that we had, right? So he ensured all his kids, my father and uncles and aunts, all of them studied well, right? So my dad became a doctor. So from that survival, we came to stability, and through his career, we came from stability to success kind of space, right? So for me, right from the beginning, it was very clear that education is something that you would have to pursue, right? Because it was so deeply ingrained in my parents, it came on to me, right? So being good at acads was not really, or not being good at acads was not really a choice. You had to work hard, you had to do well. Everything else you were given the freedom to, as long as your acads were sorted, right? So I think that was with respect to what the mindset was. But given in a place like Nasik, it's like, you are a big fish in a small pond. I mean, we had the resources, right? So for me, because I was good at studies, and obviously there's a lot of time in tier 2 cities, there aren't a lot of distractions. This is growing up in the first decade of this century, right? 2000 to 2010. Internet bhi itna widespread nahi tha. I remember my first phone was 2012. But my point being, in those 10 years, the formative years that you actually grew up, life was very simple. So along with acads, I was given the freedom to try out different things, right? And again, one thing about my grandfather, which translates down to, my parents' generation and me, is extremely risk taking and fearless in that sense, right? I mean, uh, if you want something, you work hard towards it and you get it. That's it. That was a simple rule that each and every person of my family sort of follows, right? And all of these things, just I feel, has shaped me into who I am. I wouldn't like to take credits that this is how I am, but more like how my parents and their generations above were, and which is what shaped me into it, right? So just sort of summarizing, growing up was very simple lifestyle. There were like certain rules, certain guidelines per se, but it was fairly free flowing, right? And given the kind of school I went to, got a good chance to participate in almost all kinds of sports, all kinds of activities, cultural activities as well. So it just shaped me into who I was. And eighth grade was like the pivotal point. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to share a lot of these funny details, but eighth grade is when you start having crush on people. And I had a crush on this girl who was from the Air Force. Like, her parents were from the Air Force background, right? So she was very good with English. So to impress her, I was like, I need to start reading novels. I need to start watching English movies so that I could impress her, be in the same league, speak the same language. Twilight was a rage back then, if you remember, back in 2008, 2010. So because of this, the the motivation to get better in general started. Also, I'm not sure if you might have to edit this out. I'm not sure what's the scope of how you want this to be, but just sort of sharing from that person who was just good at education, how he became well-rounded in terms of becoming and speaking well at English, and then eventually translating to who I was, right? So I think that just helped me. And then obviously those years, 8 to 12, did a lot of rigor. Because my sister also went to BITS, and from her, she was smarter than me at all points in time. So for me, it was like she was the benchmark that I have to beat, right? I mean, second, like it always happens in siblings, the younger one ke liye ek benchmark hota and you have to beat them, right? So just doing that sort of shaped me into studying hard, and I prepared for my engineering entrances. Didn't do so well in IITs, but glad I was able to make it to BITS. Obviously, there was a softer corner because my sister had been to BITS, so ek inclination tha. And BITS was just magical. But I'll pause here, given the question is around childhood.
So what happened between 8 to 12? Like you've mentioned a lot in, like, if you can just walk us through in detail, like what changed from standard 8? Like, was it your aspirations, or was it that the stage of your 5 S's changed, or was it something you were looking forward to happen? What happened?
Sure. So I'll tell you what, right? All of us have basic intellect, which would mean, and by intellect, I would like to classify it as math and science, कि एक लॉजिकल रीजनिंग है और आप इस वजह से अच्छा कर लेते हो, आपका मेमोरी रिटेंशन अच्छा है तो आप हिस्ट्री ज्योग्राफी बाकी सब्जेक्ट्स में अच्छा कर लोगे, तो वो हमेशा से था, राइट? एंड इंग्लिश 8th स्टैंडर्ड तक नेल करना वाज जस्ट लाइक हाँ ठीक है ये चैप्टर है, इसको पढ़ो, इसके क्वेश्चंस आंसर करो, बट यू वर नॉट रियली fluent in English, right? Because of that pivotal point, I think I started becoming more fluent in English. And the kind of English that I speak right now is because it started at that inflection point, right? Before that, yeah, I could speak in English, but it was broken. I wasn't so confident. I couldn't have, like, 10 sentences straight out articulating what I'm thinking, right? But that just changed. And obviously, that was the teenage wherein you wanted to be cool. So suddenly, English was that, you know, level for you to become cooler. You know about the latest movies, you're listening to latest songs, novels, all of that, right? So I think that just added like a better layer to my intellect, right? Like I was smart, I would like to think, and again, I'm not trying to brag, but I feel I was good at math and science, right? So adding that layer of English just made me very confident. And again, I'll just share a little, but in a few contexts. And 10th standard is when I came to Dharampur as well. We had our Samarth Shibir. So one thing about Bombay, and don't get me wrong here, right, is there are different levels. Like it starts with South Bombay, then it comes to Bandra, then it comes to Andheri, then goes further down, right? So that is just Bombay. Then comes Thane, then further down comes other tier 2 cities. But given I knew I have the brains, plus I can speak in English, I was never bogged down by people, even when I interacted with them who were from different levels, right? And that helped me because I knew internally I had that confidence. I may not be at the levels of richness, exposure that they are, but I know my shit, right? I know, okay, I am decently intelligent, and plus, I can speak in English. So there is no reason why I should be fearful of them, right? And given that confidence was there was no insecurity. And given there was no insecurity, I was very humble about it. कि हाँ ठीक है, इंसान ही तो है यार, कॉन्टेक्स्ट अलग है, एक्सपोजर्स अलग है, मे बी लाइफ प्रॉब्लम्स, लाइफ सिचुएशंस अलग है, बट इंसान ही तो है. So why put someone on a pedestal or make yourself feel inferior to anyone, right? And that's how I've always tried to operate per se. कि ठीक है यार, इंसान ही तो है. As long as you are making sense, as long as your intents are right, I mean, it doesn't matter if you're speaking to the president of the country or somebody else. I mean, they are people at the end of the day. So I think that learning growing up, and that element of fearlessness, right, which my grandfather propelled to my family, ki theek hai yaar, matlab, what's the worst that will happen? You might not end up speaking to them again ever in life. Theek hai, life chal rahi hai. Matlab, how does it matter? So I think lots of interconnected dots in that sense, but I feel I've given it a lot of thought as to what has shaped me into who I am and how I operate. So that's where I'm coming from.
But I think I had this fear which you said that you didn't have when you were coming to Mumbai, working, going to Dharampur. So when I first moved to Mumbai from Calcutta, and Calcutta, even though it's called like a metro city, right, the exposure which you get there is really less, maybe as compared, I would say it's maybe is as I would just kind of say that it's like a tier 2 city exposure only which I get, because we don't have so many events happening, we don't have so many interactions, or maybe school fest is the only thing where we talk to people around, right? Otherwise there was nothing happening as such. So I also was little scared and skeptical, but where I was staying, and obviously that's also thanks to Gurudev, that he asked me to stay with a guy who I was staying for like 6 years before I moved out, who helped me get better, had a good set of friends, and that kind of got my confidence up and rolling. And obviously the exposure when you start to work in a corporate, right, that also shapes you in some way or the other. So I think I resonate with your story, but I was not fearless. I had that fear and that anxiety when I moved here, but I think we all learn on our way up, and that's what I've been doing. So I think thanks for sharing, and I think you put it in a very nice way as to what kind of shaped you, and you have given a thought also as to what has been shaping you, which you maybe a lot of folks won't give. Maybe I also didn't give until I moved here, as to what will shape me in future. So I think thanks for sharing that.
I mean, um, I love to think, and I love to go on my thought spiral. And maybe that just helps me discover who I am in some capacity. Again, I'm far from, knowing why I took a certain decision, but I feel that these could have been the factors. So yeah, I feel who I am is a function of all the people and interactions I've had. So it'll be incorrect to think I'm thinking a certain way because I am the one who he is, but I am no one. I'm a mix of everyone who's around me. So yeah.
Were you
Awesome.
an extrovert?
Yes. Yes. I mean,
Okay.
see, in school, if you are like, good at acads, you are trying different things. So you tend to be feel ki, oh, I own this place, right? Growing up, I mean, obviously वैसा है कि अरे इधर का मैं भिड़ू है, whatever, right? So like
Mm-hmm.
all of those things, but I feel, I mean, I was extroverted for sure.
Okay.
Awesome. So I think, Gaurav, I would, want to take up two things from everything that you've mentioned till now, right? Like one is about your proficiency in English while you were growing, right? So I think one very separating factor between BITS and other colleges is that in the entrance exam itself, I think BITS has some amount of focus on English, right? And again, that culminates to the conversations that people have within the campus, right? So just to give that context and move into the question, how did BITS, make you who Gaurav is today, right? Like, again, I feel that you have a very entrepreneurial mindset with the things that you've done, right? And again, we know BITS is very famous for their entrepreneurs or the CEOs or the founders that they have, churned out from the system. So how did that entire ecosystem with that liberal mindset in terms of attendance, in terms of the course selection, because you also have a very liberal course, which not many people would have heard of in from an Indian educational context, right? How that, along with the entrepreneurial mindset, etc., result in who you are today, and is also firing up more entrepreneurs from BITS Pilani.
Got it. It's a very interesting point you mentioned, that, the entrance exam BITSAT has English as a section, right? But to be honest, that's just 10% of the total 450 marks. I think it's just 36 marks, 12 questions, if I'm not mistaken, something around those lines. I'm forgetting. This was several years ago. While obviously it checks for the proficiency, but most people who've come nailed PCM, right? Like, unka logical reasoning acha tha. But I'll tell you, while being proficient at English wasn't the filter to come to BITS, but what was the filter was merit. Um, Luckily, BITS has never had any reservations, right? The only caste, religion, entry point were your marks. So, given if you have a certain score, that is your identity, that defines what branch you get, right? And that is why what the entry filter, because the entry filter is so good, you get like people who are reasonably analytical, logical in that sense, right? There are several people at BITS who may not be as proficient at English. So, I mean, I'd like to say that that's not the filter, but more like the not having any reservations is what makes BITS BITS. Um, it's a very ongoing, question being asked in a few other podcasts we did, because we wrote a book on BITS Pilani. So obviously it's expected for us to know what makes BITS Pilani special, right? And again, I've interacted about this question with so many of my seniors, my batchmates, my juniors. I've had the privilege of interacting with people right from 1960 batches, so 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000, 2010s, and hopefully 2020s. I've had the privilege of interacting with at least 20 to 30 Bitsians across every decade, right? And which is why I feel I've been able to find some common threads. The thing about BITS is, right, and I'll tell you where it all started and which is why it is what it is today, right? I think someone somewhere in the 1960s batches started helping juniors just because, hey, I should help my juniors. That's about it, right? And mind you, this is 1960s, one BITS Pilani versus 5 IITs at that point in time. I'm not sure of the timelines, but you get my point, right? Like just one BITS and at least 5 IITs. Internally, हमें लगा कि अगर हमें IITs के सामने खड़े रहना है, हमारा एक ब्रांड एस्टैब्लिश करना है, तो हमें आपस में यूनाइटेड रहना पड़ेगा. We will have to support each other so that everyone grows, right? So I think that narrative sort of started in the 60s. And it so happened that one batch helped the incoming junior batch. Now the incoming junior batch, when their juniors came, they felt कि यार अगर हमारे seniors ने हमें help किया है तो हमें आगे अपने juniors को भी help करना है. And that just kept translating. And over time, what it became is, and I can definitely tell you, right? At BITS, the first 15 days is what we called interactions. That's basically सब अपने अलग clubs, departments के recruitment कर रहे होते हैं. We also rag our juniors. That has reduced significantly over time. But again, it's very harmless ragging in terms of you're just breaking the mold of the person to their preconceived form, right? Basically, you say you are this cool dude from Bangalore who studied in the best of international schools, have come in, you have a certain accent and a certain worldview. Your senior will, break you down, but not in a negative sense, but sort of just disintegrate you, tell you what are the good important parts and tell you what is fluff and help you remove that fluff so that you become more real in that sense, right? I have benefited a lot from that. I know so many, and I can arguably say 80, 90, 100%, if that's the number, have actually seen that their seniors came in, broke their worldview. Because जितने भी लोग आए ना, सब क्लास में टॉपर ही थे. मतलब IITs में जाओ, बिट्स में जाओ, सब क्लास में टॉप 1 2 3 में ही आते थे. तो तुम्हारे बारे में क्या यूनिक है यार? मतलब हम भी तो हमारे स्कूल के स्टड थे. तो that is not why what you should get to the table. So which is what a lot of our seniors did. So seniors in these first 15 days just help you with anything and everything. And there are very small little cultures, something called a book pop. So we take books from our seniors and we don't really buy it new, right? Second is room pop. If I had that room last year, I will come to your room, rag you a little, and then be like, hey, I'm your room pop. If you have anything, call me. Like that bade bhaiya, badi didi. I don't know if they like calling it that, but bade bhaiya feeling, that was there a lot at BITS. So the senior to junior culture, right? That is very, very strong. People just help because we've been helped. So we feel subconsciously it is our duty to help. Nobody says it out loud that you should help, but it's just if you see your friends helping juniors or they coming to you just because this senior gave you a number, and there are several concepts. City senior, if you are from the same city, I can reach out to you. Room senior हो गया, department senior हो गया, ID भी होता है, तो हमारा ID number होता है, right? So I'm 2014 batch, so my ID is 2014 something ahead, right? And in the end, the number is 725. So someone who was 2015 something 725, he will reach out to me. Hey, I'm your ID son, and that connect is enough, and you start helping, right? So वैसे आप सोचो कि in those 1 2 3 4 years that someone is in college, he just naturally helps a lot of people and takes help from a lot of people. So 3 batches आगे 3 batches पीछे, ऐसे 7 batches में आप, I'm pretty sure everybody at least knows 300 to 400 people. Just like that, I'm removing personal batch. मैं बोल रहा हूँ ऊपर नीचे बैचेस में सब आराम से 300-400 लोगों को तो easily जानते हैं, right? So that helps in general, whoever you want to reach out to for help, that happens. But I'd like to extrapolate this क्योंकि ये इन बैचेस में हुआ, right? Over time एक community बन गई कि मान लो कोई 2000 बैच से है और मैं 2012 में हूँ. We'll know someone, so 2000 बैच वाला 2004 वाले को जानता होगा, 2004 वाला 8 को जानता होगा, 8 12 को जानता होगा. Today if I want to reach out to this 2000 बैच वाला person, right? I can just take these recursive steps कि 2008 से 2012 से 8 वाले को reach out करो, 8 वाला मुझे 4 से connect करेगा, 4 वाला 2000 से, and that's about it. Or I could very well just write a cold email out of the blue. I can guarantee you that 90% of the Bitsians, if they know you're from BITS and you have a genuine cause and it's in their capacity to help, there is no reason why they would not help. My point being, even if you have not had overlap years, even if you don't know, or even if you don't have a warm connect or a common connect, it doesn't matter. Given this senior junior thing was so ingrained, you just extrapolated कि हाँ यार ये ठीक है, मेरा 2 साल junior नहीं है, 12 15 20 साल junior है, क्या फर्क पड़ेगा, I can help, right? So I think just that help in general was something that made BITS what it is. And say by the 1980s, I'm sure there were 7 IITs. 2000 तक मतलब 7 IITs तो थे, right? तो point is आप ऐसे सोचो कि 7 IITs आ गए, but एक ही BITS था until 2004 2008. हाँ, 2000 में पहला दुबई कैंपस बना, फिर 2004 में गोवा कैंपस बना, 2008 में हैदराबाद कैंपस बना, राइट? तो आप सोचो 2000 तक it was just one single institute trying to have its name in the engineering circles versus IITs who were so many, right? And because of which because we were like, hey, we are one against all, we have to be united. So that is a community feeling which nobody can replace, right? And it just translates ahead. You just need to know that person is a Bitsin and boom, like their guards are down. They are like, batao, kya chahte ho? How can I help? Is it in my capacity, right? So that is what is very unique about Bits, which I think has happened over the past 50, 60 years, right? So for somebody else to replicate, like, it has to seed, everybody has to take active participation and make it happen, right? Coming to the entrepreneurial bit, I mean, a lot of us say it's because of the zero attendance, flexible attendance policy. I would like to give some credit to it, but I would like to give major credit to the kind of people you are with, right? Bits में कोई किसी को judge नहीं करता है. मतलब, I've had a few instances and I can share more about it, but we attempted a Guinness World Record while at Bits. We taught 4,000 people how to solve a Rubik's Cube. It's a bizarre idea. It's मतलब 4,000 लोगों को पहले आप रूबिक्स क्यूब सिखाओ, फिर एक जगह पर इकट्ठा करो और फिर एक वर्ल्ड रिकॉर्ड अटेम्प्ट करो. It's a mindless thought, and I've written a thread about it on Twitter. My point being, nobody judged us. They were like, okay, you want to go ahead, work hard towards it. We'll help you in whatever capacity you can. Bits mein, it's so crazy, and I have a lot of stories, but I'll just try to keep it to a few. मतलब वहां पर तुम शॉर्ट्स पहनकर क्लासेस में जाते हो, प्रोफेसर को फर्क नहीं पड़ता है, तुमको फर्क नहीं पड़ता है. I think except for 2 or 3 occasions, no one really dresses up on campus. We have something called a bat snaps, तब जाकर लोग सूट पहनते हैं, या फिर आपका वो होगा डायरेक्टर्स टी पार्टी जो ग्रेजुएट होते हो 4 years के एंड पे, तब होता है, तब सूट पहनते हैं. बाकी 4 साल इतने गंदे गलीज बच्चे आपको मिलेंगे ना, जो मतलब नहाते नहीं है, शॉर्ट्स में है. I don't know, I mean not everyone, but there are a few who don't. बस बैठे हुए मतलब 2-3 दिन से बस रूम पर खाना मंगवा रहे हैं और गेमिंग कर रहे हैं, या फिर बस पोकर खेल रहे हैं. मतलब वहां पर nobody judges what you do or what you want to do. मतलब that kind of non-judgmental culture just then enables you to do anything and everything that you want. And Bits में एक और चीज ऐसा है कि there are enough crazy people, so you just need to announce that, hey, this is the crazy I'm attempting, anybody in, and you will find your tribe. Like, you'll reach out to friends, through friends, to friends, or you can just मतलब people get to know it's a very connected community campus पर सबको in the right circles things will like go right, and आपको बस reach out करना है कि hey, I'm attempting this crazy, can you join in, right? So you see so many teams who are Bitsian founders were either batchmates, were in the same department, had overlap work, or were just friends of friends and came together. That's about it. मतलब वहां पर कोई जज नहीं करता और बोलते भाई ये आइडिया सही लग रहा है, चल अटेम्प्ट करते हैं. That's about it, right? So because there's that energy, there is that non-judgment, and plus I'd like to think people are fairly logical / analytical / above a certain threshold, because starting वाला point जो अपना merit based culture है. So given all of that, I think it just happens, right? 0% attendance is obviously an enabler, but not the reason. I mean, if you want to work on something, you want to finish something, study over, like work on it overnight and then sleep the next day. If you had compulsory classes, you would not put that all-nighter, right? But since you know, हाँ ठीक है यार, skip मार लूंगा, क्या ही problem है, so you do it. So I would like to think it's an enabler, but it's not the reason why people are doing it. People are doing it because वहां पर you are driven. Plus the kind of conversations you have, right? I've had the craziest of conversations around, like जो guesstimates हम 4th year में जाके जब final year placement में बैठते हैं, right? हम बोलते थे यार ये मैगी वाला बैठा है ना यार, ये इसका धंधा कितने का होगा. You just start, then you would put assumption, अच्छा ठीक है यार, ये इसको एक मैगी बनाने में मान लो 4 से 6 मिनट लगते हैं, एक साथ उसके वेसल में वो मान लो 2 या 3 बना सकता है, तो उतना वो मैगी उसका कैपेसिटी है, पर आवर कितना करता होगा, उसका कितना मार्जिन होता होगा, कितने में बनता होगा, वो कितना मार्कअप लगा रहा है. तो ये सब रैंडमली आप बातें कर रहे हो. एंड दिस इज जस्ट से इफ यू आर इंटरेस्टेड इन बिजनेस, आप एस्ट्रो में रिलेटेड हो, लोग एस्ट्रो रिलेटेड चीजें बातें करेंगे. आपको मतलब ऐसा भी हो सकता है कि आपको बाबा सहगल या फिर मान लो बादशाह कितना कमाता होगा वो बैठकर एस्टिमेट करना है, या फिर so in college, Anirudh, who you mentioned, the founder of Pepper Content, right? Anirudh, myself, and we have a junior Kishan who works at Pepper. Very few people know about him because he's not the founder. But the 3 of us were so crazy, and we found our own tribe. Nobody had to tell us go bond with them, right? It so happened that we had similar things and we bonded. हमने मजे में प्रियंका चोपड़ा का नंबर निकाल लिया था. I have spoken to Ranveer Singh on the phone. We just were crazy कि यार ये करके देखते हैं, मजा आ जाएगा. And you just do it. Like, it's just about what's the limit to your thinking and what do you want to do. You'll find enough supporters at bits, and which is why the entrepreneurial culture, I don't think it's because 0% attendance, it's an enabler. But ठीक है यार, मतलब वो बस लोग वहां पर बहुत crazy है, which is why what happens.
So I think, Gaurav, that entire section in itself was, mind-boggling, if I may say so, because I knew some part of it, but the other aspects, and given the non-judgmental culture at IIMK especially, we tried to have some bit of it, but not at the level at which BITS exercised it. So, just to double click on one of the points that you mentioned, wherein, the batch fast forwarded the advantage of that helping nature to the following or the forthcoming batch, right? So I was listening to this podcast where the founder of Pixel was there. Yes.
Yeah, is it Dear Junior?
Yes. So he mentioned a very crucial point where he said that had BITS alumni group, if that had not been there in their early days when they were, making Hyperloop, like they were actually a part of the BITS Hyperloop team that went on to the world finals, right? And that's how that Pixel journey started. So he said that the BITS alum group was something that was very pivotal to kickstart Pixel, or else Pixel wouldn't be where it is today, right?
Yeah.
So how like in your entrepreneurial journey and other entrepreneurs as well from BITS, right? How important or how pivotal has the BITS alum group been? Like, has it been like very pivotal, or, like your thoughts on it?
So funny stories. Always I've ragged always, and like he's a very dear junior. Like I was in the US in July, like about 2 months ago, and I met him in LA, right? And I've seen Aves up close. Aves was incidentally my first angel investment opportunity, but I didn't have that kind of money, which was like the check size which Aves typically was raising at that point in time. But I tried helping him connect with a few angels in the US who incidentally invested in him, right? Point being, जो मैं starting में आपको community वाला feeling बोल रहा हूँ, right? This alumni group, and I'll tell you a few examples. So in the alumni group that we have, they've been very supportive. And startup ecosystem, we have these 2 or 3 WhatsApp groups, which is Bits in Founders group, Bits in Startups group, all of those. There are people, right, from your unicorn level founders to like founders who are just starting up. Obviously everybody understands and respects that you cannot just message them out of the blue because you have the number, right? So people have that kind of maturity, and which I think founders definitely should have. But point is, we have this group called Bitsins for Each Other, which was started by a very senior alumni called Dean Nattu Pilani. That's his popular name. Obviously, his name is Mr. Natarajan, BR Natarajan, if I'm not mistaken. But he started this WhatsApp group, Facebook group. On that Facebook group, there are 40,000 people across batches. And you just post something there, right? There have been in so many incidents. So obviously, Pilani is a college, right? And in college, you have several people who are not professors, but are a main part of the fabric of the ecosystem, right? So, जैसे वहां पर जो एक Sky Labs करके, which is like this cafe. Now, Pappu ji has been there right from 1980s. So he's seen 40, 50 batches, and every batch goes to him. And like there are these people, right? So, and similarly, there are a couple of other restaurants cannot place करके BITS के अंदर है, and I'm sure your friends will tell you more about it. Point being, so them, या फिर चौकीदार है जो इस hostel के है, right? You should actually go back and look at a lot of these campaigns on Keto. 40 lakhs was to be raised for one of the surgeries for one such individual. I wouldn't like to name him, but from the social fabric, not necessarily a professor or a student, right? But an essential part of the social fabric, which only a few people would know of. ऐसा नहीं कि अगर आप उस hostel में नहीं हो तो आप उन चौकीदार भैया को नहीं जानते होंगे, right? Point is, 40 lakh rupees was raised within 3 or 4 days. Similarly, 10-20 lakhs was raised in several such campaigns on Keto. Point is that feeling of giving back to the community is so strong, and again because of the reasons I mentioned before, is why what happened, right? So with Hyperloop, I was in college when this was happening, right? It was Sibesh, my batchmate, who had the idea, built a very solid team around it. Aves, Kshitij, they were also part of this satellite building club called Team Anant, where they built satellites, right? There were robotics ke liye Team Acute. Like there were different, basically वहाँ पर ऐसा था, as I said before, if you want to build something, just shout out loud. you will find your tribe, and together you will just put in the effort and you'll get there, right? But my point being, community mein itna, like SKF India ke jab MD the Mr. Shishir Joshipura, who I also got the chance to interview for the book, he's so accessible. All you have to do is reach out to him, right? And I'm pretty sure someone in the team reached out to him, and then SKF was like a major sponsor per se. My point being, bits may bus, you have to reach out. As I said before, 80, 90, 100% of the people might just help you if it's in their capacity and you have the right intent, right? So which is what happened. And you're right, malab, tech was just a medium, right? Ki Facebook per group banana is a medium of it, but that feeling of giving back, of helping, hey, is a bit seen, that's fraternity and I want to help, given that is so strong, it just propelled, right? So if you look at all Bitsians, I can tell you for a fact, all Bitsians who are there, who are entrepreneurs, right from your Swiggy, ग्रो हो गया, या फिर ऑफ बिजनेस जहां पर बिट्सियंस है, एमपीएल हो गया वहां पर, टू Aves, Anirudh, Pixel, Pepper, couple of these younger people who are very promising and would be building, सबके cap table पर there are at least 2 or 3 Bitsian angels. And all they had to do was reach out कि यार आप entrepreneur हो, आपने ये journey की है, join me along, guide me along the way and we'll make it big together. So that feeling is there, right? So I've made 4 angel investments. All of them have been in Bitsian startups. And it's because I've gone out of my way to help people, but they see it's not from a malicious intent. It's because I genuinely want to help, and angel investments was just a byproduct of what happened, right? So there are enough number of Bitsians. Even there are, like, after our call, there are 2 calls scheduled wherein I'm speaking with entrepreneurs from Bits who I don't even remember their face from their DP because I haven't opened and looked at that, right? He just said that, hey, I am Manan from 2022 batch. I want help. Can we talk? And we did. He's from Rajkot. He's building something around a health, something around, like, health infra of sorts, because it's broken in India. And now 3 weeks later, we had a discussion. I told him, think about these things, spend more time. 3 weeks later, he said that, hey, I'm hitting a roadblock. Can we speak again? So point is, I don't know him. He found my number. So I appreciated the hustle. I was like, ठीक है यार, मतलब मेहनत किया है, कहीं से ढूंढा मेरा नंबर, बात करते हैं. So you don't need any incentive to spend your time with another Bitsian, honestly, and which is what makes it unique. And that, to your point, the Bits Alum group, they didn't need any, I mean, people have been connected all this while. पहले I remember Yahoo groups होते थे, mailing list होती थी. Facebook ने easy कर दिया है वो, पर लोग हमेशा से connected तो रहते ही थे. It has become easy, and connected इसलिए थे क्योंकि they wanted to give back, and which is why what has happened.
So now, coming to your entrepreneurial journey, right, Gaurav, I think you started something called Fresh Purple, which when I think we'd spoken about it, and it was into, I think, the food space, health, like, if you can speak think about a little more on it, because I think you were working on it and then you started writing a book. A couple of things happened in that period. So if you can just walk you through what led to what, and obviously then we'll talk about your book in detail.
Yeah, sure. So, sure. I think good question. I'll tell you what Fresh Pot Powry is and what it really means. And again, this was 3rd year mein. I'm not sure if I can use the word bakchodi, but anyways, like, it started off with that, right? Ki the kind of person I am, I'll tell you one pivotal incident in my life which just made me more fearless in that sense, right? I had a near-death experience in my 3rd year of college. And that just taught me the fragility of life, back in the day. मतलब कोविड के बाद लोगों को पता चला कि ओ अरे लाइफ कैन बी शॉर्ट एंड कभी बत्ती गुल हो जाएगी, पता नहीं है. मुझे ये लकीली 2016 में पता चल गया था. एंड सो आई टेल यू आल्सो वेरी क्विकली व्हाट हैपेंड. पिलानी इज अ डस्टी टाउन, और ऐसा था कि मेरे बाजू वाला जो हॉस्टल था, इमेजिन दीज स्ट्रक्चर्स वर बिल्ट इन 1950s 1960s, सो दैट वाज गोइंग अंडर रेनोवेशन. तो जब वो रेनोवेशन में जा रहा था, वो ब्रिक्स और चूना यूज किया गया था. साइड वाला हॉस्टल था, जब वो रेनोवेशन में जा रहा था, ओवर द कोर्स ऑफ द सेमेस्टर पूरा डस्ट मेरे रूम में आने लगा. आई डिडंट रियलाइज माइन वाज द कॉर्नर रूम, राइट? बट ड्यूरिंग माय फाइनल एग्जाम्स आई हैड दिस breathlessness episode. I am breathless, and the next thing I know, I'm in the ICU. Like, obviously I had friends around who took me. I was legit in the ICU in Palani, right? That night, I mean, obviously they made me all right, checked all my, like, heart rate, everything, and it was just episodic because and it had so happened that on that very day, like, there was a sandstorm in Pilani. तो मेरे रूम में जो था उसकी वजह से मेरा कंडीशन बन गया था. and it's called allergic bronchitis, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. But वो बन गया था, और उस दिन सैंडस्टॉर्म हुआ, तो उस चक्कर में it just like that was a trigger, right? Allergic bronchitis में क्या होता है कि there are allergens, could be pollen, so dust, very strong smell, या pollens. If they are closer to where you are, your bronchus, the windpipe gets to get constricted because of the allergen. So it's called allergic bronchitis, right? So that happened, and because of which I couldn't breathe. And obviously, I had my friends around who took me to one of these hospitals in Pilani, but that doesn't have the best of facilities. So I called up my parents. I told them, see, I think we can afford good, better medical facilities. So please fly down here, take me back to Nashik. So they took me back. We consulted a chest physician. He just said it was episodic, and like he gave me a medicine in case it wasn't asthma, but like an episode. And luckily, back it hasn't happened ever since, right? But ऐसा हुआ कि क्योंकि ये हुआ, and I was back home, I was taking like the initial whatever dosage what he was telling me. I couldn't sleep on my own bed in Nashik, where I had slept for like 8-10 years, right? And I think your house is the most comfortable because it has the most amount of certainty. कि आपको पता है यार kitchen में plate किधर रखा हुआ है. The reason why you're homesick or you don't enjoy or are uncomfortable in a new city is because it has all variables. In your own place, everything is sorted. हाँ कहीं जाना है, चल ठीक है, Activa निकाल के चले जाओगे. So your house is most, you're most comfortable in your house because everything is certain there, right? And you're in control. So my point being, but despite that, I wasn't able to sleep on my own bed for which I was sleeping for so many years, right? So it's a little dramatic, but that night it was, I think, around 2 or 3 a.m. I woke up, I looked myself into the mirror, and I told myself, so I've been into sports, and Samyak, you know that I've been a state level football player, and I used to play in college also. I was a part of the dance club. So I told to myself that, hey, you were so athletic, yet this happened to you. So honestly, you don't know when, the final chop on your head will be when you die. So in the time that you have, might as well live it to the fullest. And this was the 5th semester, and mine was a 10 semester course, right? And this was like the final exam of 5th semester. I told myself, going forward, have the most ambitious goals that you have in your life. It doesn't matter if you succeed or lose. Just the process of it is where you learn a lot and ensure you enjoy. And I think that very conversation with myself on that night, and I still remember it was 21st December 2016. Because that happened, right? I was like, hey, you know what? I genuinely need to live my life to the fullest. So this was the 5th semester, after which I actually unleashed myself, right? So this was 5th semester. Going forward, I said every semester I'll have like a semester long goal, and that has to be the most ambitious that I've ever thought. It doesn't matter if I succeed or not, but I should have a lot of fun and like, मतलब भाई ये हो गया तो क्या मजे आ जाएंगे. Like that is how I operate now. कि I think of a very ambitious goal, and the reason to do it is यार अगर हो गया तो क्या मजे आ जाएंगे. So that is how I started operating, right? So this was 5th semester. 6th semester onwards, I started having like, semester goals. So in the 6th semester, we attempted the Guinness World Record that I was mentioning to you. We taught 4,000 people in Pilani how to solve a Rubik's Cube and attempted that. In the 7th semester, I was like, hey, you know what? I want to like try out entrepreneurship, right? 2016, so second year 2015 onwards is when I got reading about entrepreneurship per se. तब मैं your story चार्ट जाता था. मुझे हर स्टार्टअप के बारे में किसने कितना फंडिंग रेज किया है, किस सेक्टर में, वो सब मैं चार्ट जाता था, right? So 2016, 2015, 2016 was those years, and 2017, like my seventh semester of college after joining 4th year, it was like I want to try out a startup. So I had an insight कि लोग कॉलेज में हेल्दी नहीं खाते हैं. What's the easiest way to eat healthy is to eat fruits every day. So what if there could be a subscription model wherein fruits would be delivered to your doorstep daily? तो आपको convenience का टेंशन नहीं, आपके रूम पर आ रहा है, आपको बस खाना है, right? So I did that pilot, earned 50,000 rupees from it. But more than that, I validated कि यार मैं एक idea से successful execution तक लेकर जा सकता हूँ, right? And that subscription model, there are a lot of startups. This was 2016 when I had thought, abhi Shark Tank ke last season mein shayad there is this startup called Falhari, Falchart. They've come up, right? Which are like subscription based model. So I tried that out in Pilani. Somebody was telling me 4 years later, again, somebody's attempting that in Pilani. So which was very interesting, that because ideas are timeless in Pilani, right? मतलब सिर्फ लोग बदल रहे हैं, बट स्ट्रक्चर तो वही है. मतलब So like somebody else is trying that. So I was very glad to listen to that. So I tried that in the 7th semester. In the 8th semester, as Samarth you mentioned at the start, I'd attended a couple of conferences, which were Harvard US India Initiative, What in India Economic Forum. तो मेरे दिमाग में ये आया कि यार ये बच्चे बाहर पढ़ते हैं, वहां पर मतलब वहां पर पढ़ने के बाद इंडिया में आके बड़ी बड़ी कॉन्फ्रेंसेस करवा रहे हैं, इंडिया में रहकर मैं क्यों नहीं कर सकता हूँ. So we started thinking about something called the BITS Leadership Summit. So I met and convinced Mr. Prithviraj Chavan, who was the Chief Minister of Maharashtra. Mr. Suresh Prabhu was the Railway Minister back then, to come for the summit. So they were keen on coming in, but because of a few administrative reasons, it couldn't go through. But I've stayed in touch with them ever since. Suresh sir has come for 2-3 other events that I invited him for. Prithviraj sir actually wrote the foreword for my book. So point was,
how do you get in touch with them?
I don't want to say this, but again, it's the same Priyanka Chopra, Ranveer Singh stories, right? There is enough and more that you know on the internet. It's about till what depths are you willing to go. I went down this rabbit hole कि मुझे बस नंबर चाहिए सबका, just like that. मतलब पहले ले लेते, बाद में देखेंगे इसका करना क्या है. And which is where Anirudh, myself, and Kishan, we bond a lot. We just like, tell us anyone in India, and we'll help you find a connect. Again, not being boastful about it, but that's the kind of muscle we've built. I am a big fan. So I'm a big fan of Mr. Ratan Tata. I got his autograph because I wanted to. I figured Bombay House mein, I used to think Bombay House is where his office was, and I won't say it out loud because it's I shouldn't. But there are several other offices that they have. I figured which office he sits in. I obviously wouldn't get entry, right? But I said to the watchman that I already have an appointment. Then when I got to the door, I spoke to his personal assistant. I told her that, hey, I have this request. Can I get the book signed? I know it. I mean, meeting him in person is a big deal. And he'd gone into recluse a little. This was 2019, if I'm not mistaken, because obviously old age. This is pre-pandemic for sure, but old age. So I just told her that, hey, I have this handwritten letter for Mr. Ratan Tata, and I have a book which has a lot of his thoughts. So if it is okay, can you get this autograph? She's like, okay, sure, drop it here, and then I'll tell you when it happens, right? So I think this was 2018, November of 2018, I think 25th November. I have the email wherein I heard back that, hey, you can collect the book from our office. Mr. Tata has signed it. And he actually signed it for me. And he said, and I remember his word, "Dear Gaurav, all the best." And like his sign, right? And like I'd written a letter to him wherein, I said that growing up, I've obviously seen Tatas as this group which stands for trust and like a great brand everybody relates to, and I want to build a conglomerate of my own. So I'd written a letter also. So the autograph was just a thing, but there was a letter which said that, hey, thank you for your kind words for the Tata Group, and I really hope you succeed in your endeavors, right? And I have it on my email, and I like every time I want to print करके उसका ऐसे वो भी बनाना है wall पर चिपकाने के लिए, because you look at these things and you realize on your low days कि यार तुम में कुछ है. Things may not be going your way, but like these things, and I've shifted here, which is why. But back in Nashik, this BITS Leadership Summit, the team that we had, much like how Steve Jobs had Apple, and like on the first Mac, I think they have all their signatures engraved behind, right? I did this for our team. I got this big chart paper. We were facing a low जब ये थोड़ा administrative hassle चल रहा था, हमको BITS Leadership Summit जब करना था. तो एक pursuit of happiness का वो है, if you got a dream, you gotta protect it. People say they cannot do it themselves, but if it's yours, you gotta own it, around that essence, right? I wrote it down, got everybody to sign it. It's like this big A2 or A1, I'm not sure the size, इतना बड़ा है. मैंने उसको portrait मतलब laminate करके मेरे नासिक के घर में चिपकाया है. And these things just teach me that, like just enjoy the journey, right? Have these small little things just inspire you. You look at them when you are down, right? You might not look at them every day, but when you're down and you're in the room thinking, sulking, yaar ye kya hai, chal nahi raha hai, you look at it and you're like, chalo kuch to hai tum mein, matlab tum kuch to kar loge, right? Those things sort of motivate me, right? So that was one of the things with Mr. Tata, is something that I did. But coming back, right? So I was at 3-2. I was at 4-2 when the leadership summit we were attempting with. So we call 4-1-4-2, which is like 7th semester, 8th semester, 4th year, 1st semester. So that's how we call 4-1-4-2. So वो था, तब leadership summit didn't go through, but I stayed in touch with these gentlemen and they helped me, right? Sorry, coming to how I got their contact, I just went down the rabbit hole of internet. and I found Mr. Chauhan's number. I respected him because obviously he was the chief minister of my state. Great individual to begin with, but that extra inclination to find his contact was chief minister of my state, an alum of BITS Pilani. So I was like, इनसे तो बात कर रही है, इनसे तो मिलना ही है, right? Did a lot of, मतलब सब जगह हाथ पैर मारे, found his number and called him up out of the blue, right? And tab obviously the muscle that I was speaking about, right? And insight that Anirudh, myself, and Kishan have is, किसी को भी invite कर रहे हो ना, always invite for an event. They might say yes or no, but at least you don't come out as a bugger, right? So I called him and I said कि sir, Pilani में हम हमारा ये technical fest हो रहा है, we wanted to invite you as a chief guest. And obviously I had necessary things in college to have the authority to ask for it, right? But I just called him up, right? And he said ki nahi yaar, I won't be able to come, the winter sessions are starting and all of that. This was I think the 20th of February if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 20th February 2018. हाँ, तो उनको किया, but I said okay. तो मैंने पूछा सर पर फिर भी हम एक दूसरी चीज भी कर रहे हैं, उसको इनवाइट करने के लिए, wanted to meet you. He's like okay, I am traveling tomorrow, I'm in Delhi right now and I'm traveling back to Mumbai, but I have 15 minutes, can you come at this location this time, whatever. I was like cool. I kept the phone. I traveled 12 hours for a 15-minute meeting. But I knew ki the choice of meeting him in person or the chance of meeting him in person may not come ever again. So I was like, doesn't matter. Just go, right? And that 15-minute meeting lasted for 1.5 hours. At the end of it, like he asked us, hey, what are you going to do? I mean, so Pilani to Delhi is like a crazy travel. I'll tell more about it if time permits. But point is, we had to take like a round trip of 12 hours for that 15-minute meeting. And then obviously because we'd gone to Delhi, Pilani में कुछ मिलता नहीं था. तो मेरे friends ने बोला था यार आते आते मैडो डोनट्स होगा वो लेकर आना. So sir asked me कि अच्छा ठीक है मीटिंग हो गया, आप कहाँ पर जा रहे हो? पिलानी जा रहे हो डायरेक्टली? बोला नहीं सर, थोड़ा पहले दोस्तों के लिए थोड़ा कुछ खाने का लेंगे. बोले क्या लोगे? मैंने बोला डोनट. You won't believe, and this is a recurring theme which I wrote a post about also a few years ago, but he bought donut for us and he said जाओ पिलानी में दोस्तों को दे दो. And when we were walking also, like there was this one point in time he was walking ahead, he opened the door and kept it held for us and let us two students pass, and he was like chalo aage, I'll join. As in he held the door for us. Now person of his stature, he has no need to do that, but he still did it for us, right? So point is, these people, like, and वो सब lessons में pick up करते रहते हैं. People at such a crazy level, they are like कि यार we have to respect everyone and you are humble about it. Similarly, when I met Mr. Suresh Prabhu, this was in the Parliament House, we told him कि sir हम ऐसे leadership summit organize करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, we are from BITS Pilani. You know what he said? Arey, you're from such a great institute, I'm not even one bit of you. Like he used the word like he used the pun on the word bit. But my point is, people at such high stature are so humble. And that's when I think to myself कि यार मतलब अगर इतने ऊंचे लोग, इतने बड़े लोग humble है, तो हमें किस बात की चौड़ है कि यार हम मतलब इतना कर ले, ओ नाउ आई एम द डूड, अभी मेरा ये स्टैचर है, मतलब if this was a more informal conversation, I would have used a lot more words. But my point being, नहीं हो भाई तुम, मतलब people at that level, despite whatever they've done in life, are so humble. There is no reason why I should ever be arrogant or like egoistic about anything. So I think these things that I've learned over my professional journey also, that shaped me into who I am. But coming back to your question about how book happened, so this was 4-2. Then 5-1, 5-2 was my 9th and 10th semester, which was like the final year, right? तब ब्रेकफास्ट विद चैंपियंस करके एक सीरीज आता था क्रिकेट को लेकर, गौरव कपूर यूज्ड टू पॉडकास्ट, एंड दिस इज 2018. तो मैंने सोचा यार बिट्स के लिए कुछ करते हैं. सो दीज आर ऑल सेमेस्टर प्रोजेक्ट्स इफ यू नोटिस, राइट? 3-1 में ये हुआ, विच वाज द 5th सेमेस्टर. 3-2 is when I did the Guinness World Record attempt. 4-1 was when I did the startup idea that I wanted to try. 4-2 was when the leadership summit. And then 5-1, 5-2 my final year, I was like यार अभी एक पॉडकास्ट टाइप शुरू करते हैं. 2018 में पॉडकास्ट की कोई बातें नहीं कर रहा था. इट वाज जस्ट अप एंड कमिंग. जो रोगन, टिम फेरिस, बहुत कम लोग सुनते थे. फिर ओवर टाइम दोज फॉर्मेट्स स्टार्टेड पिकिंग अप, राइट? बट माय पॉइंट वाज, मैंने सोचा कि गौरव कपूर जैसा बिट्स के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में करते हैं. बिट्स के बहुत सारे एंटरप्रेन्योर्स हैं, तो बिट्स के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में करते हैं. तो मैंने पहला वीडियो शूट किया. मैंने बोला भाई ये तो नहीं हो पाएगा, मतलब, एंड दिस वाज अगेन जूम तो तब पॉपुलर भी नहीं था. तो मैं ऐसे 2 कैमराज, काफी फनी स्टोरी है, बट ऐसे 2 कैमराज लेकर गया अलग अलग एंगल से. मैं सोचा मैं भी एकदम मस्त ऐसे अलग एंगल वाला बनाऊंगा, बट आई वाज अ सिंगल पर्सन डूइंग दिस. आई रिकॉर्डेड द वीडियो एंड आई रियलाइज्ड कि देखो वीडियो तो नहीं बन रहा है, मतलब इतना पैसा तो है नहीं कि किसी टीम को हायर करके प्रोफेशनली शूट करे, खुद से हो नहीं पाएगा, बस की है नहीं. तो सोचा वीडियो नहीं, पॉडकास्ट करते हैं ऑडियो फॉर्मेट में. बट जब वो किया तब मुझे रियलाइज हुआ कि यार पॉडकास्ट का ना बहुत सैडली एक छोटा शेल्फ लाइफ होता है. विद एवरी न्यू एपिसोड, पिछले वाला अनलेस इट्स लाइक स्टेलर, लोग कम सुनना प्रेफर करेंगे. पीपल ऑलवेज वांट टू प्रेफर लिसनिंग टू द न्यूअर वन, राइट? तो तब मैंने रियलाइज किया कि पॉडकास्ट के अलावा बुक करते हैं, क्योंकि इट्स अ लॉट मोर पैकेज्ड, लाइक 25 स्टोरीज टुगेदर. एंड द थॉट देन वाज कि यार कर लिया तो कितना मजा आ जाएगा भाई, ऑथर बन जाओगे. मतलब आई कैन राइट, बट देयर इज अ डिफरेंस बिटवीन राइटिंग एंड कंपेलिंग राइटिंग, राइट? तो मुझे पता था अलोंग द वे कि यार शायद मेरा लेवल उतना ज्यादा नहीं है, बट आई एम लाइक कि क्या ही फर्क पड़ता है यार, मतलब ऐसे कर लिया तो कितनी मौज हो जाएगी. सो आई ऑपरेट इन दैट फ्रेमवर्क कि I think if attempting something and doing it will give me a lot of happiness, and then I start working backwards. I never think about limitations, challenges, personal skill set. I'm like, what I have, I will do. What I don't have, I will acquire and form a team around it. But I'm like, करने में बहुत मजा आएगा, तो let's attempt it, right? And that is how like the book started. So it took us over 3 years to finish this book. Started in June of 2018, and I was visiting my sister in the US. So my first interview happened in the US, and then couple more happened along the way. So we traveled to, I think, 8 or 10 cities to do all of these 25 interviews in person, and it was self-funded. Luckily, back by then I was interning at Viacom 18, and this was also around the same time Samyak we met. So I had decent stipend, and going back to घर पे कोई problem नहीं था, from a financial, and which has also helped me in my career. Ever since I started getting my first stipend, obviously in Bombay it is expensive, but because I was living with my aunt, I didn't have to pay rent. So my point was, उस पैसे में मैं खुद का चला लेता था. तो उस point of time से मैंने घर से पैसा लेना शुरू नहीं किया. But because क्योंकि उस point of time से मैं चला रहा था, my parents got the extra confidence कि he can take his own decisions. So I would travel to all of these cities self-funded. Obviously the US trip was funded by my sister, but anything in India, right? And I was smart about it. I would club all of them together, crash at my friend's place. Delhi जा रहा हो तो एक हफ्ते में 4 इंटरव्यू करने हैं, पूरा हफ्ता फ्रेंड के घर पे हो तो रहने का कुछ प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. खाना पीना जो बॉम्बे में लगता था वही दिल्ली में लगता था. It was just those flight tickets, which is okay, right? So spent a lot of my internship stipend money on doing these interviews, traveling. So from June 2018 till September 2019, did all of these interviews in person, which was great. And then plan was to publish the book sometime in 2020, but again pandemic happened. And then our editor who was helping us, she had some family affected by pandemic, we were affected, so all of that got pushed. And 2021 August is when it got launched. But these entire 3 years we were at the project and we were able to publish it. That said, the earlier point I mentioned, I'm a good writer, but I'm not the most compelling writer. So I have a junior from college, Durjay. I asked him, would you want to join me along on this journey, right? And he is a beautiful writer. So he's been a part of drama club and he's been a part of poetry club. And poetry he writes very well both in English and Hindi. So I knew as a person, for it to be like gripping, the stories to come out really well, to have that command over language, I knew I had to partner with Durjay. So I reached out to him, and again, that you don't like. Obviously, we had overlap in college, but we didn't interact as much. We weren't the closest, right? I mean, he wouldn't be, or I wouldn't be on his, hey, this is my birthday, let's invite him list. Like we weren't that close or whatever, right? But I reached out to him and said, ki yaar, chalo ye karte hai. And we did it together, right? So that's how the entire journey came about. So 5152 is मतलब that कि हर semester में एक बड़ा project करना है, and this was like a year-long project that I did, because of which the book happened. But yeah, that has been I've loved my side projects so much that I put in my heart and soul into it. We are planning something very, very interesting. It's slightly early, but the way I envision it will happen. I want to do something with leading OTT players around startups. So with Netflix, Amazon Prime, I met someone at Netflix, or he used to work earlier at Netflix, and he told me, see, and he's known me for a few years now. He said, you have the access to people in startups directly or through someone, first degree, second degree, but you don't have the storytelling capabilities in terms of what a production grade, Netflix grade series looks like, right? And I said, yeah, sure. So he said, why don't you go out and find out who, partner with someone who has done it, who has the credibility. So when I was going to the US, this conversation was just 1 week before the US. LA was not even in my plan. But I met the producer of Indian Matchmaking because I was like, मुझे Netflix के साथ कुछ करना है. And I went there, I pitched her. Those conversations are on. But my point is, I decided I want to do it. Now I'll put my heart and soul into it. Like enough. I think over time, एक realization हो गया bits जाने के बाद. And to Samarth, your previous question, कि if you have your heart in the right place, you put in the energy and you're honest and smart about doing things, you'll get whatever you want in life. So that thing just helped me. And again, it's still premature in that sense, but I know for a fact अगले 2-3 साल में कुछ ना कुछ पक्का करेंगे Netflix, Amazon इनके साथ. Yeah.
Insane. Like, I think I like, undoubtedly this has been one of my best shows now. Like, the way you shared, it's not about how you share or what you share, it's about how genuine about what you share. And I think your story has been absolutely very genuine and nothing less. So I think that's the best part. And obviously, the book you've written, I have a copy and I've read it, and it's like, you mentioned about Tata, and the it resonates with the Ajay Mishra story as well, right? How they have a huge legacy and stuff. So yeah, I think, I mean, what you have done, and I'm great that we were in the same team back then, so that I could get to know you. Otherwise, I don't know if we would have met, like, out of
Yeah.
blue or anywhere else. So maybe I'm thankful for that, and I am in awe of this conversation. But I think we are in the fag end now. I think we have the last 1-2 questions left, and it's about, I think, Stoa. I want to know more about it, so I'll let Samarth ask.
So I think there are just two parts to the fag end of the conversation. So one is related to Stoa, and the second is two questions that we ask all our guests, and we'll come to that. So about Stoa, right? So from what I feel about you as a person and the conversation we've had till now, for you, getting things done, or the application layer of things is something which had a higher precedence than the normal ratta marna, or the textual education, right? And I think Stoa, predominantly in the new era of edtech in India, if I may say so, right, is trying to revolutionize that, wherein that application layer is getting a higher precedence over the normal textual stuff, right? So how do you think this changing scenario will benefit India in the long run, and how do you think like players like Stoa, Masters Union, will fit into this jigsaw puzzle?
Right. I'll share something about Stoa. We are a company that is built on top of several insights. And if you look at all co-founders, right, Aditya, Raj, who are very active on Twitter, and which is why Twitter, LinkedIn, which is why you may have come across them. But you have two more co-founders, Manoj and Sharmad. Um, all four of them, and which is what translates to the leadership and below, right, is all four of them are driven by insights, are very transparent about things, and honest also, right? That, hey, we are attempting this. These are a few things we know. These are a few things we don't know. But we have the courage to experiment. If we have the right inputs, it will lead us to somewhere. Then we'll learn from there, and we'll get on to the next insight and experiment, and then to the next place, right? So point is that honesty is why we are doing what we are doing. Plus that passion around wanting to do it makes us honest about the pursuit, which leads us to a lot of insights, right? So to your question, how it will shape up India, on 15th August, just about a month ago, Aditya had written a post on our Slack channel. He was mentioning that the number which earns greater than 10 lakhs as individuals, obviously there are a lot of people who are proprietors show, and Samyak, you are a CA, you know this better, show their income a lot on the company. Their personal individual income they'll show as less, but a company ka hoga. But the number which officially has greater than 10 lakh income as individuals is so low, right? The way we think about it, and earlier we were a cohort based curriculum. Now the entire positioning has changed to a charter. Samyak, you are a CFA yourself. uh, a lot is inspired by the CFA CA model, right? Chartered. So we figured, what is a business with a very defensible moat? The answer is a charter, a certifying body. ISO certification stands for itself, right? If I'm not mistaken, CFA was started in 1963. Do you want to guess what was the revenue of CFA in 2019? It was 400 million in 2019 alone. It's an insane number to think about, right? We say 100 million revenue ho gaya, to billion dollar outcome ye wo. It's 400 million. And that was the insight for us. Cohort based courses, after a point in time, become a little difficult to scale. We have seen with On Deck, which was like the Stanford of the internet, which inspired most of them. Then income sharing agreement model, which Lambda School brought in about, that had its own challenges. So a lot of these form factor of cohort based courses have the challenge of scaling. But what can scale is not if you are teaching students, but if you are getting students to take a test, and that test and that certification, which later acts as a signal. Today, so CFF technically, displaced MBA in finance. People earlier would say MBA in finance. Now I like, bhai CFA kar leta hu. And that acts as the same signal. Somebody who has like proficiency in finance depending on L1, L2, L3, right? We thought, why not do this? Why not become the charter? And the promise of our charter, and which is what we feel with respect to the Indian startup ecosystem, right? There are good and enough number of jobs out there which pay greater than 8 lakhs, 12 lakhs, 16 lakhs, right? People are willing to pay that amount, but they want proficient people for it, right? So we thought, what if we could feed this gap, become that proficiency layer, become that charter which people aspire, L1, L2, after which they get a job. So our promise is, if you crack L1, you get a job of 8 lakhs and above. If you crack L2, you get a job of 16 lakhs and above. So tying to your question about how it shapes India, what drives us is, if we are able to do this, we are actually directly contributing to the economy of the country, because we are creating people who have 10 lakhs plus on an average manlo income. And you and I know, मतलब घर में एक अगर हेल्पिंग हैंड, एक फाइनेंशियल स्ट्रीम और बढ़ जाता है, वो लाइफ कितनी बदल देता है. You'll be like, hey, you know what, my dad has been traveling on this old cycle or Luna, which is the case in tier 2, tier 3 cities, by the way. What if I can gift him an Activa? GDP तुम्हारा उससे बढ़ गया, but he can gift an Activa because now he has that income and he wants to give back something to his parents. अब उस Activa की वजह से जो पापा काम करते थे, he can do it 2x 3x now. उनका business बढ़ गया. So my point is, we feel if we are able to create these income generating individuals above a certain level, and believe me, the 10 lakh, greater than 10 lakh वाला number is very very low. For other reasons, India में लोग declare नहीं करते, company के नाम पे करते हैं वो सब. But my point is, if we just go by the official stats, we know clearly we do this happens to, like, that family, and at the larger level the country. So tell me, why is it not a promising mission to be behind, right? So this is what we feel about what we are wanting to do, and it's great that there are so many more such models that are coming in. People think that if you are in the same space you are competitive, but Mahesh Babu, who was earlier the CEO of Mahindra Electric Vehicle, who I interviewed in my book, he speaks a lot about, I asked him ki, hey, Mahindra obviously has launched, Tatas are launching, lots of brands are coming up who are launching EV vehicles. He said, this is not competition, this is collaboration. All of us are stakeholders who are propelling the cause of EVs in India ahead. So until it gets to a certain critical mass, it's not competitive, it's collaborative. While obviously to begin with, you will go after, say, the same set of people who can afford an EV and have the infra and everything. But in that pursuit, अब बहुत ज़्यादा marketing कर रहे हो. उस marketing से लोग aware हो रहे हैं. और उससे आपका जो पाई है वो बड़ा हो रहा है. तो it's not competitive or cannibalistic, but it's more collaborative and cohesive, and it just grows from there, right? So I think for models like us, Masters Union, GrowthX, there are a couple more who are contributing, right? My point is, all of these are just propelling the cause ahead. So I mean, it's a cause we think will directly impact the nation. And it's tangible. हमने एक बच्चा जिसका, and I'll tell you an insight again on which it's built. तुम्हें पता है Nashik, and Nashik is my reference, and I'm sure it translates to a lot. It translates a lot to the other city. DU के भी मेरे पास थोड़े numbers है. Do you know what's the highest job people from colleges not tier 1 get? Like, what's the highest package? It's in the range of 2 lakhs, 3 lakhs.
Yep,
And
that's right.
that's
And
not,
I think that's biased towards maybe the tech side, because there are a lot of engineers who are at that level who get like 2 3 lakhs, and because of that quantum, it gets biased or skewed towards that. But like an average, maybe a finance guy or someone who's done like honors in finance, marketing, and stuff, that might be a little higher. But seeing the quantum of engineers we have in our country, that's skewed towards maybe
weighted
4
average
lakhs.
कम कर देता है effectively वो.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
So point being, आप ऐसे सोचो जिसको 3 लाख 4 लाख की आज नौकरी है, if we are able to give them a break which takes them to 8 lakhs 10 lakhs, right? And if they pursue L2 like up to 15 16 also, right? I think we are fitting in right in the Delta 4 theory, which Kunal Shah speaks about, right? Like we are actually causing a change in someone's life, which makes it so we have to nail our promise of people getting that job. But that means anybody who's coming in, they know what they're getting out of it. So it's a clear outcome for them also, right? So which is why I feel like a model like ours and that positioning of becoming a charter, I think it's much more like we want to become a market signal, say in the next 5-10 years, right? So that's how Stoa is positioned and built. Like it's built on a lot of insights. Yeah.
So I think the Masters Union thing which you said was really good, like how that they are competing against the biggest MBA schools in the country, and they are doing at least maybe if not better, but at least at par with what the IIMs would do. And like glad to say that we have Pratham Mittal also coming on our show
Oh wow.
tomorrow, and there'll be a lot of insights from him. And I've loved this podcast as well. So what he's doing in the education industry is also like really great. I would say like the Masters Union program in itself is very good. And
You
so I
know,
think you mentioned. Sorry, yeah.
no,
Go
sorry, I
ahead. Go
didn't
ahead.
mean to interject you here, but
No, no, no.
my co-founder Aditya, he teaches
Hmm.
at Masters Union. So you
Oh
might
wow.
feel we are competing, but that's not the case. We are propelling the
It's
cause ahead.
collaborative.
Yeah.
Correct, correct, correct. You're right. And similarly, GrowthX also. I think Samarth is taking the GrowthX course as we speak. He's doing that product course out there. So I think these things are changing the education system, which needed to be changed. Like maybe I don't know, Gaurav, in your time, but for me, when I was doing my CA or maybe when I was graduating from St. Xavier's, it was really bookish the way people teach. And the worst part, or I would say not the worst part, but the problem was that whoever teaches us, right, is not an industry expert, or he's not taken the practical exposure of that industry. He's just teaching
Yeah.
from the book or giving examples from somewhere he's read, right? And that's what I think Masters Union is changing, Stoa is changing, Protex is changing, right? So I think that's really commendable, and I think you're in the right cause. And I hope the Stoa story turns out to be really well, and I think they are really doing well, as so as to say. So yeah, all the best for that.
Thank
Last,
you.
maybe one question I have for you is, obviously you've written your own book, and this might have been inspired by the books you have read in the past, maybe. So any good book recommendations you have for our viewers, which changed your life, or can help in creating a startup, maybe something on finance, something on business, anything you came across.
So to be fair, I think around finance, entrepreneurship, there are very popular books and they are popular for a reason. And I've enjoyed them as well, right? Like 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel or say The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. These are popular books for a reason because it's distilled in a format where a newbie can pick it up, and then there is the mom's test, couple of these, right, which is distilled so that anybody new, uh, amateur, I wouldn't call them a noob, but a level above an amateur, can pick it up and become better. So I think these are great. But one book I think has been very deep and profound, and which I'm currently reading also, is this book called Anti-Fragile by Nicholas Taleb, right? um, I think what is unique about Taleb, and he's been quoted in several places, and we are used to quoting Naval, but I feel there are 3 or 4 more thinkers of our time. Uh, the way I like to, and like people whose essays I very frequently read. So Naval obviously is very popular, but there is Taleb. Balaji Srinivasan is also very foresighted, right? Like I remember his tweet. This was 28th Jan 2020, way before the pandemic happened, or like was considered pandemic in the world, right? He'd written about people are not realizing, but it's a health emergency, and these are the things that will happen. Like we might enter a pandemic, and these are the things that will happen. He was so on point. So 4 out of 10 things that he wrote back then were so true. Like people like work from home will become popular, remote teams, all of those things. He'd written about masks. This is January 2020, maybe 1.5, like 45 days, 6 weeks ahead of India's pandemic. तो अगर उस टाइम एंड आई रेड हिज ट्वीट देन, तब मुझे लगा हाँ ठीक है भाई, वन ऑफ दीज थियरिस्ट. बट व्हेन इट केम टू पिक्चर आई वाज लाइक यार, I need to follow this guy. Like he's ahead of the curve. So he's one of them. Paul Graham is another. Sam Altman is another. Couple of these individuals who write such amazing essays, which makes you think, hey, I need to subscribe to what they say, obviously put my layer of filtering and thought process, but these people just speak such, I mean, they are ahead of the curve, yaar, aise. And only when you consume ahead of the curve stuff will you also, like, slowly translate to like a higher level yourself. So I mean, that, which is why I've started to follow these people more regularly now. Yeah.
I think you hit the nail. I think Ray Dalio is one more. I don't know if you follow
Yeah,
him.
yeah,
He
yeah.
is also his
Principles.
entire
Yeah.
principles, right? And
Yeah.
he's written the Changing World Order. There's an entire, it's a book, but he started with a newsletter on LinkedIn. How China will surpass US in the coming decade. He's also like a great thinker. I follow him as well, and obviously Balaji's threads are amazing. Naval's threads or tweets also are amazing. Sam Altman you spoke about. There is this blog on mental models per se. It's called the Fernand Street, right? By
Yeah,
Shane
yeah,
Parrish.
yeah.
Even he's great. So I think Zero to One and Psychology of Money are the two books I think everyone has recommended in the last 6 episodes, and I think by far the best. And there's one called Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, the
Yeah, yeah.
Nike story, right? So even
So
that has been
I
really
picked this
popular.
up. I picked Shoe Dog. Honestly, it inspired me a lot to think that there is no limit to what you can achieve, and that's something that I've taken from the book, right? So honestly, I don't have anything extra to add. These are popular for a reason because they hit the nail, as you said, right? So yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised these were recurring names that came about.
Correct. But yeah, thanks. Thank you so much, Gaurav. I think by far my best conversation I've had, and maybe because it was a wavelength that matched, or maybe how genuine you were. But the best takeaway for me was the thing that changed your life. Maybe that near death experience which you had, right? If that wouldn't have happened, a couple of things which you experimented over the next couple of years, that wouldn't have happened. So
Possibly.
to see in a positive way that actually change the way you work, the way you think, and the way you want to do things in future. So I think thanks a lot for sharing. We have had a valuable insight from all the questions we've asked.